Children of the River, Chapter 6. Of all the guests seated on their living room floor Sunday evening, Sundara was happiest to see her friend Moni. "How lucky I feel," the round-faced older girl was saying now, "to sit down to your good food, Soka." Every time Moni came over, she seemed a little plumper. "I don't care how fat I get," she had often told Sundara. After eating insects, rats, and scorpions to stay alive, a few extra pounds seemed like a smart idea. Soka urged another plateful on her. "It helps being able to glean for the garlic. When it's free, I don't have to be stingy with it. As for the rice, I just have to do the best I can with the pitiful stuff they sell here." Grandmother sighed. "How I miss the rice we had at home. The way it always smelled so fresh. The kind we get here has all the goodness milled right out of it." "I'm just thankful they have rice at all in America," Moni said. "I'm such a lobster brain, I had the notion they ate only bread." Sundara joined the soft laughter. She liked the way Moni had never afraid to tell a joke on herself. After everything she'd been through, it was surprising she could laugh at all. Back in Cambodia, Moni's young husband had been a soldier. Left alone while he fought the communists, she'd taken refuge in Phnom Penh to await the birth of her baby, one among thousands camping on the sidewalks. When the Khmer Rouge took the city, she, like many others, hoped for the best. Maybe the communists would not be so bad. At least the fighting and the killing would stop, and soon she could be with her husband again. For a brief hour or so, as the truckloads of soldiers rumbled through the streets, people actually cheered. But the mood of celebration did not last. Soon the soldiers were ordering everyone to leave the city. The Americans, they said, were coming with their B-52s to bomb Phnom Penh. Easy to believe. Hadn't the American search for lurking North Vietnamese already cratered much of the Cambodian countryside? As the march from Phnom Penh began, Moni's time came, as the Khmer women say, to swim the great river. On a sidewalk, with people trudging past, she gave birth. Soka and Sundara had wept to hear this, but Moni assured them that she was not the only one, and much worse things were happening. After my baby was born, a little boy begged me for help. He must have been one of those thrown out of the hospital because his foot was gone. But I couldn't carry him. I was so weak myself, and with my own new baby, oi, his little spirit comes to me still." Naturally, Soka and Sundara assumed her baby had died. Many Khmer babies failed to survive under much better conditions. Soka herself had lost 2 between Ravi and Pon. But Moni said no, she lived. She was a strong little peasant like me. Not knowing which direction to walk, the city dwellers had been herded around the countryside by the dead-eyed, black-garbed soldiers. But Moni plodded steadily north toward her parents' rice-farming village, baby tied to her krama. She ate whatever she could find, even tree bark, when she came across some that was free of the Americans' leaf-killing poison spray. At her parents, she recovered, but soon learned her husband would have been one of the first executed when the Khmer Rouge began their purge, and the new Kampuchea had no place for the widows of anti-communist soldiers. She, too, was marked for death. Leaving the baby with her parents, she fled on foot, her breast aching with the milk her baby would never suck. Through the jungle she made her way, braving wild panthers and Khmer Rouge soldiers, picking around the mines and the scattered bones of those who'd chosen the wrong place to step. She'd even managed to sneak past the thieves at the Thai border. Her story haunted Sundara. Such courage. Not only had Moni given birth to the child, but she kept it alive. How did Moni succeed in this, where Sundara had failed? But Sundara's guilt about Soka's baby was something she could never discuss, not even with Moni. Now she rose and stepped carefully through the seated crowd. Since the small dining area could not hold all the guests, Nara, Soko, and Sundara had pushed back their few pieces of furniture and spread mats over the wall-to-wall carpeting in the living room. It was often like this because their friends liked to put on the sompats and the sarongs they did not feel comfortable wearing elsewhere and come to eat at Naro and Soka on their new American-style house. People wanted their advice, for they had been in the United States the longest. Sometimes Soka complained privately about the inconvenience, but what could they do? Friends must be made welcome, even the unexpected ones. Sundara returned to the kitchen with Soka's silver-colored palm leaf plate on which she arranged the karup knau, a dessert of candied jackfruit. The children were up now and running around, chasing each other with gleeful shrieks, pausing only to snatch one of the golden morsels. The parents frowned, but not too sternly. "Kampuk," they called to their little ones jokingly. "Such bad manners." But Soka assured them she didn't mind the noise. "It makes me happy in my heart to hear them laugh like that after all that's happened." "You're lucky," one sad-eyed woman said to Soka. "Your children didn't see the troubled things mine did." Please don't start, Sundara thought to herself, passing the plate. Perhaps it was unkind, but she dreaded the company of this woman. Except for her daughter and herself, Pol Pot's men had killed her entire family. Sundara felt truly sorry for her, but if she started to tell her story one more time, every detail about the horrifying way they died. "Your little girl will forget the bad things," Soka said, also wanting to steer the woman away from repeating her tale. "Look at her now." The child in question raced by, panting with laughter, chasing Pon. She seemed perfectly normal except for one thing, her almost hysterical aversion to wearing any item of red clothing, a reminder of blood. "I worried about my little Pon for a long time," Soka went on. "I'll never forget when I first had to take him to the daycare center, both of us crying. I couldn't believe my sponsor expected me to leave him with people who weren't even family. What kind of cruel place is this America? I thought. But I got used to it, and as you can see, he is fine." Now, under Ravi's direction, the children were making a tent, using the many hand-crocheted afghans given them by the church ladies. A small, grinning face poked out of one of the colorful tent flaps, then disappeared inside. Sundara smiled, then sighed. Sometimes she wished she were a few years younger. The children did seem happier. Even the small ones from the other families who had survived the worst of it seemed to do well, starting America school so early. Pon, of course, remembered nothing, and if Ravi did, he didn't dwell on it. His mind was full of Star Wars, pocket calculators, and organizing another touch football game with his many friends. Oh, sometimes he spoke wistfully of the pet rooster he'd had to leave behind, but for Sundara, she almost felt she left her whole self behind. That laughing girl who had run along the sparkling sand beaches of Reem, made a mischief in the dusty streets of Phnom Penh. Only a few weeks before she left the country forever, her father had given her the loveliest blue parasol painted with pink roses. Not a good gift, as it turned out, to cheer a girl weary of remaining at home. How she'd pleaded with him to take her walking along the quay. In her mind, she saw herself twirling it, drawing the attention of the boys on their bicycles. Of course, in her father's presence, she could hardly return their smiles, but how pleasant to see them watching her, and maybe she and Papa could stop at one of the Parisian-style cafes, or take the pedicab ride to the Chinese shopping district. "Innocent one, I cannot take you. It's too dangerous with the rockets, and believe me, the city is not as you remember it. Hateful war, it ruined everything." And now, in spite of everything she'd gone through, in a few months that allowed, everything that showed her just how sheltered she'd been and how little she understood of the war, this one thought still haunted her. Never would she stroll the Boulevard Monavogue beneath the lavender jacarantas and blooming peacock trees twirling a painted parasol. Not while her hair was still black, anyway. Not while she was young and pretty. Shamefully foolish, this regret, but somehow she couldn't get rid of it. "Some of the older children surprised me with their American ways, too," the wife of Prom K was saying now. "Did you hear about Polk Simon and the son of Polk Sari? His American families taught him to play poker, and he won all of their money from them." Sundara frowned to herself. Polk Simon was just a year ahead of her in school. She didn't like him. Why did the others find his poker playing so admirable? Because he'd beaten the Americans? Even Soka smiled. It made little sense. Sundara could just imagine the trouble if Soka learned she'd been gambling. At any time other than the New Year, that is. Then it was permitted. But this was different. Polk Simon was making a career of it. "Yes, he's a smart boy. They say he's already planning to take military training in college." Naro scoffed. "What's so smart about going into the military? If your country is defeated, what are you going to do for a job?" Now the talk turned, as it always must, to the problems of life in America. Why did they have to pay those Social Security taxes? Wasn't that what families were for? But smuggling money back to the ones at home, that was a problem too. They always wanted more. They thought America was heaven because everyone had a car. They didn't understand that everyone had to have a car. And speaking of cars, wasn't it terrible, the looks they got for driving shiny new ones? They saved and paid cash, hadn't they? And bought American too, not Japanese. There was no way to win. If they went on welfare, Americans called them spongers. If they worked hard and succeeded, people got jealous. Among the guests were the men and women newly arrived in America, and they listened wide-eyed as the others went on, saying the same things Sundara had heard so many times before. How strange all of this must sound to them, she thought. Only a few weeks ago they'd been languishing in the squalid refugee camp, probably imagining America as the answer to every prayer. Then again, Sundara thought, at least they'd been wanting to come here, waiting. They had time to get used to the idea. For her family, it had all happened in such a bewildering speed. She had not known she was leaving her home, perhaps forever, that frantic April night when they boarded the ship. Not until 2 months later had it dawned on her that it was not temporary sojourn. A terrible but brief interlude between the trouble at home blew over. When it hit her, she was sitting in a tent at the Hastings assembled orientation class at Camp Pendleton, California. Heaven protect me, she thought, her eyes glazing with sudden stunned dismay. The teacher was explaining how to live in America, as if that's what they'd be doing for a long, long time. They were not going home, not soon, maybe never. Goodbye, Kampuchea. Hello, America. They'd made one conscious decision, to flee for their lives, and here they were. Just yesterday, it seemed, she'd been swinging on a breezy porch in the Cambodian fishing village. Now she was sweltering in an armed camp guarded by rifle-toting American soldiers. Still, Sundara thought now, looking at the newly arrived husband and wife, this family's long idle months in the Thai camp were nothing to envy, and even with the support of fellow Khmers, it would be harder for them in many ways coming now. They could not have escaped with their savings in a few rubies, sapphires, or leaves of gold as Naro and some of the other first ones had, and no doubt they were already worn down with having suffered so many difficulties. Sundara glanced at the dazed-looking young mother. She felt sympathetic and hoped the woman would not be the kind to tell every terrible detail over and over. Her heart sank when she saw Naro going for the tape deck. Not the tape deck of Khmer music, not that song about the woman in the refugee camp. Even the tiring complaints about Americans' life were better than dwelling on the sadness. When I read the words you wrote, I thought my dying hour had come. You say you found a new life, a new wife, in a far-off foreign land. Over the mountains I've led our children, with one fierce hope of finding you. Now they're weeping at my knees, begging, please, won't I tell them where you've gone? Over the sea I send my spirit, to hurt your heart with one sad plea. Hear them cry for their father, though you love another, and have long forgotten me. Sundara's throat closed. The woman who'd lost her family broke down in sobs. Soka moved to comfort her. Naro shook his head sadly. I still cannot understand how it's come to this. People fleeing not only from the Vietnamese, but also from fellow Khmers. Our own people. The Vietnamese are not slaughtering each other. Oh, stop, Sundara thought. It seems impossible, the new man offered quietly, but many are saying that the Vietnamese will be an improvement over the Khmer Rouge. What a choice, like running from a tiger on a land to be eaten by the alligator in the water. The Vietnamese would be happy to see every Khmer starve, so they could occupy our country permanently. Ah, if only Prince Sihanouk would have come back. They sighed with longing. Once, as a small child, Sundara had been part of a joyful throng of greeted Sihanouk on the wide-lined, tree-lined boulevard of Phnom Penh. Her memories were not of the beloved ruler, however, but of the flowers everyone tossed at his slowly passing car, the necklace of fragrant jasmine she'd been given to wear in celebration. These older ones remembered Sihanouk himself, though. Somehow they thought he could return from exile in China and rule Kampuchea once again. They might go home. Why listen to this, Sundara thought, and she rose to collect the bowls. They might go on with this sighing and pining all night. But perhaps the others had had enough too. The woman began gathering in one corner, Soka taking the new family's baby in her arms. Jennifer was her name. She was born here, her father liked to say in English. She's American. Do you want to give this little one to me to keep? Soka joked. Of course everyone prefers sons, but a daughter is good too. Soka would never have a daughter now. Everyone had told them it cost thousands of dollars to have a baby in the United States. Where were they going to get money like that? Soka had felt she had no choice. Shortly after arriving, she had an operation for no more babies. Sundara watched her aunt with a kind of pained fascination, wondering if she was remembering the baby daughter that had died. Soka looked up from Jennifer now. Her black eyes fell on Sundara and the face smiled. "You can do the dishes, niece." "Yes, younger aunt." Sundara slipped into the kitchen, suddenly trembling. Whether Soka looked at her that way, she imagined her aunt saying to herself, "This is a girl who was sent to care for my little child and let her die instead." Moni followed with plates balanced on her forearms. "Let me help." Moni always had to be busy as if to justify her presence. Easy to understand. How else could a girl feel without a real place of her own in a family? And Moni had no family at all, not here. Until recently, she had to live with her American sponsors. They'd finally been able to help her get her own tiny apartment, but Sundara knew she was lonely. "The Millers didn't have one of these dishwashing machines," Moni said, "so I still don't understand how to work them." "It's easy. You scrape, and I'll show you how to load it." Things like this made Sundara feel older than her friend, even though Moni was 22. Having come to America earlier, Sundara understood many things about life here that Moni did not. But in other ways, Moni was the wiser. She knew something of men. Definitely. Sundara fit the plates in the racks. "Why must they always play those songs?" Moni shook her head. "The one about the woman and her children could make a stone statue weep." "And what about the one where the girl is stranded in Long Beach with her new baby because the man she escaped with abandoned her?" "Oh, that's a sad one too," Moni agreed. "That really happened to a girl I know, and of course her family has disowned her because she's never approved of the match in the first place. But sometimes I wonder which is worse, being abandoned by your husband or being stuck with one you didn't like." Sundara pondered this as they worked. What a dilemma. "Remember that girl in Salem," Moni went on, "the one who's pregnant? She's miserable. She confessed to me the other day that she only married her husband because it looked like he was a good chance of getting sponsored in America. Now she says he's turned mean. He beats her, and she swears she'd rather be back rotting in a refugee camp than with the man she loves than here in America. Life here is not at all what she was expecting." Sundara poured the blue detergent into a cup. "That's not surprising. You need a powerful dream to sustain yourself through all the time in camp. Day after day, you'd be promising yourself your troubles would be over if only you could get to America. And then, of course, it doesn't turn out that way." She closed the dishwasher door and punched the start button. Moni jumped at the rush of water. Sundara smiled. "Don't worry, it's supposed to sound like that. Now, speaking of men and the troubles they bring, have you seen Chansing?" Moni glanced behind her to make sure they were still alone. "Can you keep a secret? We're thinking of getting married." "That's wonderful, but why a secret?" "I'm not blind. I'm not deaf. I know everyone was whispering about me when I danced the lathon with him at New Year's. So bold, they said, a girl who goes wherever the wind blows. They say I should marry the man from Batabang, the one that lives in Portland. Can you imagine? What a feverish rat. He's no man for a strong woman like me. But I like Chansing. I think everyone was too hard on him about his arrest. I think he honestly did not understand that in this country you can't go around catching the birds in the parks to eat." Sundara murmured sympathetically, but she was remembering Naro's anger at this incident. He had called Chansing a fool and complained that it made them all look bad. He hated to see that kind of thing get into the newspapers. "You see, Sundara, since I have no one to arrange a marriage for me, I must do the best I can. I want to make a new life, start a family of my own. How can this happen if I do nothing but wait?" "But won't everyone be pleased you found a Khmer to marry?" "I hope so." There was a hesitancy in Moni's voice, a tone of doubt Sundara did not understand. There was nothing in this match that would surprise anyone. They had all seen marriages between refugees agreed upon in little as 2 days. Everyone understood that feeling, the impatience to belong to a family again. "Are you still wondering," Sundara said quietly, "if your first husband is alive?" "Oh no, many people saw the soldiers loaded into the trucks and driven away. None of them ever came back." She bit her lip. "I still think about him, but I am sure he is dead." After a moment she said, "This is past. Life here is so different. I already feel as if I've died myself and been reincarnated." "Moni, that's exactly how I feel sometimes." Moni nodded. "I want to think about the future now." Later, when all the guests had gone, Sundara retired to her corner in the garage, a space defined by a square rug remnant, a shelf arranged of produce boxes, and a suspended plastic pipe where she hung her few clothes. She pulled the string on the bare light bulb and found her chemistry book. Then she curled up on the canvas cot, wrapping herself in the Afghan Soka let her use. Colder these nights. Soon she'd be sleeping in her coat again. It had been such a long day. Church, picking up all afternoon, then this gathering. She had not studied as much as she meant to, and now she couldn't concentrate. She kept thinking of Moni, how hard as Moni tried to keep the Khmer ways, people still disapproved of her. It didn't seem fair. Would it be this way for her too? She decided to speak to her uncle. Somehow Naro seemed more approachable, less intimidating than her aunt. She went into the dining room where she sat working over her letters on behalf of Soka's sister in the camp. Uncle? Yes? You know I'm 17 now, she paused. Wasn't Soka just 17 or 18 when you married her? Naro frowned. You want to get married? Oh no, I just wondered. Things are so different here. Girls go out with boys, not Khmer girls. Sundara looked down at the flower-patterned vinyl floor. How could he be so sure the way it would be with Khmer girls in America? Wasn't she herself one of the first faced with growing up here? I'm surprised you choose to hurt my ears about this. Don't we have enough problems? Perhaps this is something for us to think about, not you. Your aunt and I will see about a husband for you at the proper time. Uncle, please pardon my boldness, but younger Aunt is already talking of matching me with that Chinese boy. Well, naturally she wants to keep her eyes open for a good match. If some family offers an especially handsome bride price... His hands chopped the air. Enough is enough. Medical school is your goal. Your task is to go and study. Mine is to finish these letters. Sundara hesitated. There was so much more she wished to discuss. Should she explain that Tamaran to help stall off her aunt's matchmaking? Should she remind her uncle how few suitable Khmer men they actually knew? No, obviously he considered this conversation concluded, so she returned to the garage. For a moment she just stood there, peering into the far dark corners, the cold of the smooth cement floor chilling her stockinged feet. Everything was different now. Couldn't he see that? Everything. What a long way she was from the airy tiled roof house she'd known as a child. At first they'd even been afraid to sleep in these strangely tight American dwellings. There was no air. Surely they would suffocate. Now she was used to it, but still. Padding past the station wagon, her roommate, she checked the locks of the garage door and made sure the curtains they'd rigged up over the glass panels were properly closed. Almost every night when she did this, she thought of home, and she wished she were latching the shutters of the room she'd shared with her sister, Mayari, taking in one last breath of the fragrant frapani blossoms down in the garden instead of the stink of gasoline and laundry detergent. But enough of this dangerous dreaming. She had nearly forgotten to put the last load of clothes into the dryer. She would not want to face morning where Soka found wet clothes when she was counting on dry ones. She climbed back into her cot to the hum of the dryer and the rhythmic click of Pon's overall buckles against the metal drum. Not so long ago, she reflected, it had seemed quite reasonable that she should marry whoever was chosen for her, especially when the chosen one was Shamaran. Now, somehow, she felt uneasy about this. What if it couldn't be Shamaran? What if Soka thought only of the man's income and didn't care if he was kind or had a nice smile? She didn't want to be like the unhappy girl in Salem. And as for Naro's admonition to think only of her education, well, becoming a doctor was so far in the future, and right now, in this lonely time, a chemistry book was no comfort at all. She needed something closer, sooner, something to make her eager for each new day. But then, she was looking forward to something, wasn't she? Or more precisely, someone. She hugged the Afghan tight around her shoulders, alarmed at admitting this even to herself. Such secret feelings would have been guarded in utmost care. Heaven protect her, for this certain someone was white. He was American. He was absolutely forbidden.